because so much of this, whether it's how we're raised or whatever, can feel uncomfortable at first.
Mhm.
Intuitive, makes sense, but uncomfortable. So I'm going to ask what sounds like a cheesy question, but I mean it to be right. Like, what are some tips you would give people to tolerating discomfort? And I know there's lots out there, but you seem like an authentic person, and I feel like lots of the stuff out there is more like salesy and gimmicky. So I'm curious of like what tips you would give your friend, your best friend, if she was struggling with that, or he was struggling with that. What would you go to?
I think that this is something that I actually learned from my fiance. But I would just tell people to say what you mean. Don't like be trying to like, oh, I'm going to say this way to maybe soften it, or like, oh, like their feelings, I don't want them to get hurt. Whatever reason you have for not just saying exactly what you mean, forget it. Just say exactly what you mean. And if it needs to be clarified later, for someone that you're in a relationship with, like my best friend, she and I will be like, oh my God, I was feeling this way. Oh my God, I didn't like mean for you to feel that way. Oh my God. Like we just have this relationship where we're both kind of softer. But we're like, well, I've been afraid to tell you this one thing because I didn't want you to react this certain way, and I didn't want you to think that I didn't care about you, and I didn't want you to think this. And it's just like all of that can be saved if you just said what you mean. And in the moments that we're having those conversations, it's like one of us will just finally say it, and you just feel like the elephant is gone from the room. You just feel like you can finally breathe, you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable because you said what you meant. And I think that goes for when you feel discomfort as well. Like when you don't want to be in a relationship, just break up. Just break up with them. Tell them exactly how you feel. If you are struggling in a relationship with your siblings or your parents or your coworkers or whoever it is, say exactly what you mean. And when they ask for clarity, give them clarity. And then move forward from there, because that's the only thing you can do. All you can do is give someone your truth, and if that's not good enough, then you know where to set your boundaries. But most of the time, in my experience, I think that I've come to learn that it's always made me a better person. And even though everything isn't okay, I am okay because I said what I felt. I said what I meant. And I can choose now, like, what I want to do with the relationship moving forward.
Would you agree that there's a prerequisite step to that, which we were talking about earlier, which is the work you have to do to know what you mean, right? Say what you mean, I agree with. But knowing what you mean, actually knowing the truth of what you mean, can be tricky. And that's, again, back to the nuance point, I think, where this can get tough for people, myself very much included, because sometimes we think we're doing that. Like, I'm saying what I mean, but a week later, I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't mean that. Like, that was stupid of me, whatever it is, right?
Well, it comes with practice, too, like you just like, this is what I mean right now, and like maybe a week from now, that's not exactly what I meant, but then you have to then say what you mean. Like, go back to the person and be like, hey, I actually wanted to clarify something. Like, I thought about it a little bit more. Like, you don't have to be like 100% perfect. Like, you're allowed to change your mind and be dumb and just make mistakes. In every relationship that you have, you're going to make a mess, and you can clean it up. Like, that's it. Like, that's all you can do.
On that point, so like, because somebody could say like, well, what if the other person's not playing by the rules? What if they don't accept your apology, or what if they're offended by what you said, or whatever, right? You hurt them in some way. That's where the boundaries come in.
Yeah. Yeah, like that, like, they're never going to understand what you mean. So you have to learn, like, if you want to keep that relationship, like, what are the things that you have in common still that you can build your relationship off of? And maybe it can't be this specific thing right now. Maybe it can grow into that later. Like, there's room for other people to be just as messy as you are. And if they're not playing by the rules, teach them the rules. Like, there are no rules. Like, There are no rules. You just have to say what you mean. And if the other person isn't saying what they mean, then all you can do is take what they said to you at face value. Like you can't just be going and digging in other people's brains. That's weird.
Yeah.
Like they said this. Okay, let me explain this back to you. Like, is this what you mean? No, that's not what I meant. Okay, like that's just dialogue. That's communication.